Leaving Roseburg on Thursday, June 23, 2022, we drove up Highway 138 to Diamond Lake and met up with Lee's old friend Tom Coble. I remembered him as Tommy, one of my students when I taught music in Prospect back in the 70s. He and his son Zach now own a successful steel fabricating business. Tom knows all the shortcuts to Silver Lake, so we let him lead the way. Once we filled our tanks in Silver Lake, we proceeded to Fort Rock to take some photos. Fort Rock is a tuff ring, located on an Ice Age lake bed in North Lake County. The ring is about 4,460 feet in diameter and stands about 200 feet high above the surrounding plain. Its name is derived from the tall straight sides that resemble the palisades of a fort. Our next destination was Hole in the Ground, just a few miles from Fort Rock. Hole in the Ground is a crater created by a volcanic steam explosion, also known as a MAR. That's M-A-A-R. Some people previously claimed this nature's wonder is a result of a meteoroid hitting Earth, but this is not correct. Just like Fort Rock, the hole has volcanic origin. Personally, I like the idea of a meteor hitting the Earth, but anyway. The site is located about 7 miles away from Fort Rock. The hole's roughly 300 feet in depth and a mile in width. Camped out overnight on the rim overlooking Fort Rock and enjoyed the sunset, night sky, and the sunrise the next morning. It felt a little chilly out at 4:30 a.m. at 4,800 feet elevation, and I was glad I remembered to pack my stocking cap and fleece jacket. Between Lee and I, there were 4 cameras recording the sunrise. This morning at 4:50, a rare astrological event occurred. As predicted in the Farmer's Almanac, All 5 naked-eye planets, along with the moon, were visible in the sky at once. Approximately 40 minutes before sunrise toward the southern and eastern sky, the planets were arranged in their true order from the Sun: Mercury, Venus, the Moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The last time that a similarly compact parade of planets graced our skies was in 1864. When we heard they would all be lined up, we hoped to get them all in one frame. But no, they were stretched out in a straight line across the sky and not really conducive for a single frame photo. After breakfast, we drove through Christmas Valley and 5 miles up a gravel road to view Crack in the Ground. Being a road grader operator for many years, Lee grumbled about the washboarding as he had to keep his speed down to less than 20 miles per hour the whole way. To add insult to injury, when we got to the parking lot, the vault toilet was out of commission, so he had to search for a clump of sagebrush bushy enough to conceal his modesty. In the meantime, Tom and I hiked down the trail to the Crack and entered in. Crack in the Ground is an ancient volcanic fissure over 2 miles long and up to 70 feet deep.
This is cool.
Normally, fissures like this one are filled with soil and rock by processes of erosion and sedimentation. However, because it is located in such an arid region, very little filling has occurred.
We feel the temperature change as we start climbing out.
Yeah. And Crack in the Ground exists today nearly as it did shortly after its formation thousands of years ago. An established 2-mile trail along the fissure's bottom offers a unique hike where the temperature can be as much as 20 degrees cooler than at the surface. On beyond the parking area, the road improved a lot. I guess most visitors returned the way they came, but we continued on to Green Mountain Lookout, where we thought we might spend the night. There was already one person in the campground when we arrived, setting up his telescope for stargazing. We drove up to another vantage point and set up our own private camp and prepared to photograph the clear night sky. On our way east out of Christmas Valley, I had Lee pull over so I could capture an eagle I saw sitting on a power pole. I was ready when he took flight and realized later he was carrying his breakfast with him. A few hours of driving brought us to Plush, Oregon, where we filled up and proceeded into Heart Mountain Antelope Reserve. We were hoping to get some shots of the critters and weren't disappointed. These two, along the road, didn't seem to be too skittish and posed for us, unconcerned. Later, we spotted a herd of 20 or so off in the distance. The Hot Springs campground we intended to spend the night at was a little bit of a disappointment for us. Upon arriving at the pool, we were immediately mooned by a bather changing out of his travel clothes. Sorry, no pics. I say to each his own, but when we pulled into our would-be camp spot to fly the drone around the area, Lee overheard our neighbors talking about eating some mushrooms later. While we've been known to howl at the moon in our younger days, it was the last thing we wanted to hear after a long day of driving, so we pushed on to French Glen. We filled up with gas there, acquiring several mosquito bites in the process, and drove up the Steens Road about 3 miles to Steens Mountain Resort. The word resort in the name might be a little pretentious, but it had nice showers, AC for recharging all our batteries, and a picnic table to sit at to transfer photos from our cameras to our laptops. Well, here we are, Sunday morning, south of French Glen, on our way towards Fields. Lee has trusted me with the helm for the time being, until I screw up.
We hopefully are going to find an antelope and skin him out and have him for breakfast.
Or maybe a little roadkill if necessary.
Well, there's that possum we should have picked up back there.
Yeah, ought to be a jackrabbit up here laying in the road for long. If it hasn't been picked over by the buzzards too much, might be able to salvage something. It was about 7:30 when we stopped in Fields to top off the tank, but the outpost doesn't open till 9 on Sundays. Lee was carrying 10 gallons of extra fuel on board, so we didn't worry too much and drove on and arrived at what would be our camp spot for the next 2 days. The Alvord Desert is a 12 by 7 mile dry lake bed that lies in the shadow of the Steens Mountains and averages from 5 to 7 inches of rain a year, the driest place in Oregon. It was formed when rainwater filled shallow, round depressions in the landscape, leaving behind precipitated salt minerals on the Earth's crust upon evaporation. During the dry season, the surface is flat enough to drive across or land small aircraft on. An unofficial women's land speed record was set in 1976 here by Kitty O'Neill at 512 miles per hour. In August of 2019, Jessie Combs died in a crash after attempting to break that record. Her jet-powered car clocked a record speed of nearly 523 miles per hour. Guinness World Records has confirmed Miss Combs, 39, was the first person to break the record in more than 40 years. Lee and I sat under the canopy all afternoon, staying hydrated and watching daredevils test their driving skills. They raced up and down the old track on the far side of the desert and probably helped to create a 5-hour parade of dust devils. We hoped the clouds would blow away and leave us to photograph the darkest sky in Oregon. By 10:30, the last vestige of sun was gone, and we began documenting the universe. So we set up all our gear under the batwing canopy and suffered through the 90-degree heat all afternoon, just waiting for a photo op. The wind seemed to be picking up, but the upside was the clouds were dissipating, so so we anticipated a clear night for stargazing. We captured the sunset while relaxing with an adult beverage and waited for dark. As soon as the North Star peeked out, I was able to properly orient the star tracker. A horrific dust storm descended on us, and we had to hastily cover up our gear, hunker down, and hope the wind would stop. It didn't, so by 10:30 we battened down the hatches and went to bed. It gusted strong all night, probably 50 or 60 miles per hour at times. Although things had calmed down considerably by morning, a borax dust had permeated every nook and cranny. Lee and I decided that after last night's dust storm, we should wash out some of those nooks and crannies. So we headed for an RV park I knew of in Jordan Valley that had showers. Along the way, we motored into Rome, Oregon, on fumes, and filled up alongside a fellow traveler. The community of Rome in Malheur County received its name from the imposing nearby formations of fossil-bearing clay that looks like Roman ruins. The 100-foot-high formations, which are also known as the Pillars of Rome, measure about 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. These strange white bluffs stand near the Oahe Crossing and were a landmark to pioneers traveling the Oregon Trail, reminding them of the structures of ancient Rome. For the rafting and whitewater enthusiast, Rome is the entry point for a great ride down the wild and scenic Oahe River, past beautiful canyons, wildflowers, and wildlife. That's a new item on my bucket list. An hour or so of taking photos and videos of beautiful rock formations tend to make one hungry, so we stopped again at Rome Station for a burger and a salad. We thought about ordering a beer to go with, but it was only 11 a.m. I never drink before noon, but fortunately Rome is in the Mountain Time Zone, and we happily indulged. We pulled into Sunny Ridge RV Park in Jordan Valley and set up camp. One of the owners came over to greet us and ask us about our camera equipment and Lee's unique camp trailer. Dressed in short denim cutoffs, a cocktail in one hand and a cigarette in the other, she made small talk and flirted with us until the mosquitoes drove her back to her mobile home. The next morning, Carolyn dropped by again. We were on a first-name basis by then. And I asked her where we could get breakfast in town. She told us there were only 2 places, and the Rock House was definitely better than the other. We took her advice and ordered the breakfast burrito when we got there. I'm glad we didn't go to the other place, because the burrito we ordered was barely edible. Or, as I muttered on the way out, I guess it'll make a turd. We were very happy to find the 25-mile road through Leslie Gulch to Slocum Creek Campground was in pretty good shape. We stopped a few places along the way to fly the canyon and get video of this gorgeous place. We were also happy to find very few people in camp, and all but 2 of them had left by nightfall. I stayed up late that night getting this slightly out of focus time lapse. And woke before sunrise to get the morning sun casting its glow on the surrounding rock formations. We ate a simple breakfast and packed up our stuff and drove all the way back to Roseburg the next day, reminiscing and discussing the fine time we had on this adventure to Oregon's Outback.